Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is Jason's Amazing Race Recap 38, episode number 5. Today, we're going to watch the racers as they go from Hungary into Croatia. So if you're ready, let's get started. I'm your host, Jason Mogul. We start this episode with 9 teams left. Kat and Alex just couldn't keep up with the rest, and they were eliminated. Tucker and Eric get to leave first because they had come in first place on the last leg. But what we didn't see was a time when they actually left. I like to look at that because I like to do the math to see what the gap is between the different teams, the first place team and the last place team. And we learned that there was a reason for that, because all teams were headed to the airport to get on an airplane on the same airplane. So all of them would be arriving at the same time in their destination, which was Dubrovnik, Croatia. And here we see another equalizer. So on the train during the last episode, there were 2 trains that brought the teams together within an hour of each other. But now they're all going to be leaving at the same time on the same airplane. But it is not a 100% equalizer, and here's why. Tucker and Eric, they show up at the airport first because they left the pit stop first, and they get to book their tickets, and savvy teams, smart teams, will pick tickets for seats that are at the front of the airplane so they can get off faster than other teams that are at the back of the airplane perhaps. So the order they leave the pit stop does matter on how fast teams can get off the airplane in Dubrovnik. The other advantage that Tucker and Eric may have had is that because they got to the airport first and got their tickets first, they may have had time to browse the bookstores there for maps at their destination. We did see them pose with a Rubik's Cube display, since that was their fast forward. That was kind of funny. I like that. That was pretty good. And at this point, I would like to remind everyone that both Jazz and Jag and Kylan and Taylor still have their express passes. Will they need these with the double U-turn coming up? We will see. Once on the ground after their flight, teams had to take a taxi to find a statue of a Croatian poet to get their next clue. And coming off the airplane, Tucker and Eric, they were in first place. But getting into a taxi last was Nat and Steph. I'm not sure how that happened, but they ended up being last. First to arrive at the clue box was Joseph and Adam. They were in 7th place, moving backwards if you recall. But the equalizer helped them, and the same thing with Kyler and Taylor, who were right on their heels. Once at the statue, the clue revealed a detour. Either carry a large fishing net through the city, as well as a bucket of chum. Now, if you don't know what a bucket of chum is, it's cut up fish bits. It's used to attract other fish. The other fish are the ones that you want to catch by pouring the chum into the water and attracting them. It's very smelly and very nasty. The other choice was to skin and fillet a fish to the satisfaction of a local judge. So it was a choice between a physical task that also required some navigation through the city or a precise attention to detail type task. And we have Tucker and Eric, Jazz and Jag, and Joseph and Adam deciding to do the fish nets. All other teams decided to do the skin and fillet of the fish. Tucker and Eric just muscled their way through that task. They didn't seem to have any difficulty navigating through the city or carrying those nets. But as they were carrying those nets through the city, I noticed that they had to climb stairs in order to do that. Hills and stairs. You know, if you've listened to me on podcasts before about The Amazing Race, then you know I love hills and stairs. And this is the first time I really saw teams that had to go up and down stairs during a task. The reason why I like them so much is because I know how tiring that is. I'm sure you do too. And it can wear out teams, makes them physically tired, which then causes mental mistakes, which causes just an overall reduction in their spirits and their just energy level. It just really wears them down. After teams finished either the carrying of the fish nets or the filleting of the fish, then their next task was to find the booza bar hidden through a small entrance to get their next clue. Now, I did a little research because I didn't know what Booze-a-Bar meant. Was it booze? Was it just the name of the street? But as it turns out, Booza is the name of the beach there in Dubrovnik. And so that's why they call it the Booze-a-Bar. And we also see that there are 2 Booze-a-Bars there in the city. So teams had to find the right one. A couple of teams, like Izzy and Paige, went to the wrong one and then had to backtrack and go find the right one. Tucker and Eric were first to arrive at Booze-a-Bar, and they found the double U-turn. And they faced a choice. So when you have a double U-turn, or any U-turn, you have some choices to make. So if you get to U-turn somebody, you can choose several different teams. You can choose the strongest team, who you think is the strongest team, and try to push them back further in the pack, or try to eliminate them. That would eliminate a competition, a strong competitor. Or you could try to eliminate and U-turn the weakest team, because they would probably get eliminated as a result of the U-turn. Or you can make a decision based on emotion. You can U-turn someone that you don't like, someone that did you some injustice, wronged you in some way, disrespected you, and so it made you mad. So you're going to use emotion, you're going to get revenge, and you're going to get them back and U-turn them. Or you could decide not to U-turn anybody. And that's what Tucker and Eric decided to do. I think, this is just my opinion here, that a decision like that, at this point in the race, is a very smart decision. Because they know there's probably going to be another U-turn coming up. So they're still in the mode of let's play nice. Let's not make accidental enemies of some of the other competitors at this point. And that's what they decided to do here. So Tucker and Eric's decision is exactly what I would expect from a savvy and long-range thinking team who understand how the game can be played and should be played. And so that makes them a very dangerous team, in my opinion. It makes them a very strong team. Because not only do they do well at the tasks, but they're also very smart. And next to arrive at the double U-turn were the 3 teams from the Train Wreck Alliance. This is Nat and Steph, Jazz and Jag, and Joseph and Adam. They had all formed back up at this point in the race, and were back together here at this U-turn. Now, Nat and Steph, they decided not to U-turn anyone either. Again, I think that's very smart on their part. And next was Jazz and Jag. So what did they decide to do? Well, it wasn't unexpected because they had talked about it before, but they decided to U-turn Izzy and Paige because of whatever bad blood had happened before on Big Brother. And they didn't like each other, and so it was expected that whoever got to the U-turn first would U-turn. So Jazz and Jag would U-turn Izzy and Paige, and if Izzy and Paige had gotten there first, they probably would have U-turned Jazz and Jag. So this decision by Jazz and Jag was one on emotion. It wasn't based on any logic or any strategy in the game. It was based on emotion. And I think that's a mistake. It may come back and haunt them, especially if Izzy and Paige do not get eliminated as a result of this U-turn. Because we know there's probably going to be another equalizer coming up. So if you don't eliminate the team that you U-turned, if somehow they're able to survive, then later during an equalizer, they're going to be right back up with you and they're going to be staring you in the face again. And as far as Joseph and Adam, they decided to U-turn Christine and Rubina because they were trying to protect Hannah and Simone, which is the team that they liked. Now, they could have also picked Jack and Chelsea, but perhaps they thought they were a weak enough team that they would get eliminated anyway. So let's review. So you had Tucker and Eric, who decided not to U-turn anybody. Nat and Steph decided not to U-turn anybody. Jazz and Jag U-turned Izzy and Paige because of emotion, because of bad blood that happened between them in the past. And you had Joseph and Adam, who decided to protect Hannah and Simone, and then decided to U-turn Christine and Rubina. And now comes along Kylan and Taylor. And Taylor saw on the board that 2 male teams had U-turned 2 female teams and came to the conclusion that it was an example of active exclusion of women by men. and that it made her sick to her stomach. Her conclusion was also based on something she'd heard, that there was a pact between the guys to try to eliminate the women. Now, I've been watching and rewatching these episodes of this season in preparation for this podcast, and I can't see any evidence at all of that. So her reaction was a surprise to me. Maybe it was to you, I don't know. Maybe you're seeing the same thing she saw. I'm not seeing it. In any case, Izzy and Paige and Christine and Rubina had to go do the other half of the detour. So that did slow them down. The clue at the U-turn told teams to go to a gate in the city, which looked like it was a drawbridge that was in front of a fortress entrance. It was pretty neat. And they would get their next clue. And that clue revealed a roadblock, which was to assemble a 3-wheeled scooter and then race it down a hill to a finish line and do that in less than 36 seconds. And of course, during the assembly of the scooter, it was an opportunity for teams to brag about how good they were at putting things together, only to struggle and be humbled by such a simple task. It was Tucker and Eric who finished first, and they went on to the pit stop, and they came in first that leg, and they won $2,500 each. Kylan and Taylor, they came in second, and Jazz and Jag, they came in third. Now, Izzy and Paige and Christine and Rubina, even though they struggled and were U-turned, they did survive, and they did not come in last, so they're still racing. So we get to see sometime in the future if the decision by Jazz and Jag and Joseph and Adam to U-turn those two teams, if that was a mistake or if it was actually good. We will find out in the future. It was Hannah and Simone who struggled most through the day, having trouble skinning and filleting their fish to the satisfaction of the local judge. Then they decided to quit that task and try the other side of the detour, the nets, but they couldn't get directions to that, so they went back and finished up the fish, so that delayed them there. And Simone struggled with both assembling the scooter and actually getting it down the hill in 36 seconds. So they came in last and were eliminated. All right, so let's talk about some impressions during this leg here. So we started off with the equalizer, and as a result, we had strong teams emerge. So Tucker and Eric, Kylan and Taylor, and Jazz and Jag came out as strong teams after the equalizer. A common theme for those three teams. And then teams had decisions to make at the U-turn. So we will see if the decisions by Jazz and Jag and Joseph and Adam, what kind of implications that has for the future. And after all of that, two teams still have their express pass. So Jazz and Jag and Kylan and Taylor both still have their express passes. They may not need them, and that's okay. You know, Kylan and Taylor had the option to give it to any team, and they had decided to give it to Jazz and Jag. One, to kind of play nice with them, to keep them on their side. And two, because those two teams have those express passes, it keeps them out of the hands of other teams who may need them. But I hope they do need to use them, because it is kind of boring when teams do well all the time. And so having them struggle and then require the express pass, that would be interesting. That would make the game a little bit more interesting. Especially if the team hems and haws and has some indecision about whether to use it or not. That's always an interesting situation too. And the last impression has to do with Dubrovnik, the city. I mean, it looks like it would be a very neat place to visit, especially in the summer. What we saw there is, I mean, it did look chilly, look cold. People had their coats on. Couldn't really enjoy the beach or be out there outside under the umbrellas, enjoying the sun. And then the waves were crashing. We could see that, the waves crashing against the rocks. It looked a pretty rough time of year, but it did look pretty neat. I think it would be a really neat place to visit. And that'll wrap it up for this episode. So thanks for joining. I always appreciate you listening in. And join me next time for Jason's Amazing Race Recap 38. Episode number 6, and we will see what happens with our racers next. See you then.